please be seated? The state may call its next witness, or, excuse me, the defense.
Yes, ma'am. Defense calls Kim Potter to the stand.
Okay, Miss Potter. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer questions?
I do.
This case.
I do, Your Honor.
Please have a seat, and please remove your mask. And Ms. Potter, I gave the rules for testifying, and you've been in the courtroom. Do you need for me to repeat them?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. State your full name and spell it.
Kimberly, Kimberlyann, Potter, Potter.
All right, counsel.
Thank you. Ms. Potter, will you speak into the mic? Because both of your lawyers have a hard time hearing.
Yes, there's just Kleenex here.
Okay. You stated your full name. How old are you, ma'am?
49.
And are you married?
Yes.
And is your husband in the courtroom?
Yes, he is.
And what's his name?
Jeff Potter.
And how long have you been married?
Over 25 years.
And when did you first meet your husband?
When I was 15.
And you were in high school?
Yes.
And did you reunite much later?
Yes, when I was in college.
And what does your husband do?
He works for a healthcare system now.
Is he a retired police officer also?
Yes, he is.
And where was he a police officer?
Fridley, Minnesota.
Was he also a member of a drug task force?
Yes, he was.
And with respect to your children, do you have children?
Yes.
And what are they, 2 boys?
I have 2 boys,
And what are their names?
Nicholas and Samuel.
And are they in the courtroom?
No, they're not.
And where is Nicholas?
He's an active duty Marine.
And where's that at?
He's currently stationed in Florida.
And your other son, where's he at?
He's in college in North Dakota.
And are they going to be home for the holidays?
Yes, they will.
Is your mother in the courtroom?
Yes.
And your sister?
No, she's not.
But is your brother in the courtroom?
Yes, he is.
And besides your brother and your mother, your father is deceased?
Yes.
And do you have any other siblings?
I have another sister and a brother.
And what are they? Do you know what their ages are?
My oldest sister's in her 50s, and my other brother's in his 50s also.
And what do they do for a living?
My sister works for a medical device company. My oldest brother works for a parking company, and my other brother works for retail.
Going back to when you were a youngster, where did you go to elementary school?
Immaculate Conception Catholic School,
And where was that located or is located?
Columbia Heights, Minnesota.
And did you live in that neighborhood?
Yes, I did.
While you were at elementary school, while you were going to that school, did you have a police officer visit your school?
Yes.
And do you actually know his name today?
Yes, it's Officer Michael McGee,
And where was he a police officer
the
at?
Columbia Heights Police Department.
And why was he at your school?
He was doing bicycle safety for grade school kids.
And you remembered his name. Anything else that was significant about him that caused you to do something in your life?
He was, on that occasion, he really influenced me as a youngster that the police are good people, and I wanted to be something like that someday.
And because of that, and because of him being at your school, did you start out doing that?
Yes.
And what was your first job or volunteer work as some type of a law enforcement officer, student, explorer, school cop?
Well, the first thing I did was when junior high was a school patrol officer, if that counts.
Yes, that does count. And what did a school patrol officer do back then?
It was junior high, so we helped the younger grade school age children get across the street.
And did you continue to do that throughout junior high?
Yes, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
And after getting into high school, what did you do?
The Fridley Police Department came to my high school and had a booth set up for the Fridley Police Explorers.
And did you join the Explorers?
Yes, I did.
Why did you join the Explorers? First of all, what is an Explorer?
It's part of the Boy Scouts of America. It's a area where you can have career enhancement, or you can learn about different jobs like law enforcement or firefighting, things of that nature.
And were you an explorer throughout your high school days?
Yes, I was.
I can't remember if I asked you what high school you went to.
Tino Grace High School in Fridley.
With respect to criminal justice or law enforcement, while you were in high school, besides being an explorer, did you do anything else?
I had jobs.
Okay, what was your job?
My first job was at a gas station.
What did you do there?
Clerk, cashier.
And did you continue that job throughout high school?
Yes, and into college.
Okay, so your next visit was college.
Yes.
Where did you go to college?
St. Mary's College in Winona, Minnesota.
And that's about, what, 70 miles from here, 80?
Yeah, it's down towards La Crosse.
Okay, it's in Winona.
Yes.
And what was your major at St. Mary's?
Criminal justice and sociology with an emphasis on elderly studies or geriatric sociology.
Why did you take those courses?
I wanted to go into law enforcement, and I had an interest in serving the older community and understanding their needs and wants.
Did you graduate from St. Mary's?
Yes, I did.
And was that a 3-year program, 4
It was a 4-year program. I finished it in 3.5 because I had an internship in the summer.
And where did you internship?
The Columbia Heights Police Department.
Columbia Heights Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do at the Columbia Heights Police Department?
I was assigned to an officer who was in their community-oriented policing program.
Did you also continue your explorer career while in college?
I stopped being an explorer after my freshman year, and then I role-played at the annual conference.
What does that mean?
Every year the Explorer program had an annual conference at Breezy Point Resort, and they needed role players, and they liked to use students or people that were in law enforcement.
So, you graduated from St. Mary's,
Yes.
and what did you do after that?
After that, I would have gone to Skills in the summer of 1994.
Okay, and what do you mean by that?
I went to Skills.
What does that mean?
I went to the police certification program so I could get hired.
And where was that at?
Alexandria Technical College.
In Alexandria, Minnesota?
Correct.
So everybody knows about 120 miles, 30 from
Yes.
here? And did you stay there while you were being educated?
Yes.
What kind of a program was that? How long was it?
It was 10 or 12 weeks.
And what do you mean, is that where you obtain your skills to apply as a police officer?
Yes, it was a hands-on training. I had the college education, the book knowledge, and then I went there for my skills program or my hands-on part from getting my license.
After this program, did you go out and try and get a job in law enforcement?
Yes, I did.
And were you successful at first?
Yes.
Well, did you have a job at Anoka?
Yeah, I worked at the Anoka Metro Regional Treatment Center because I graduated in in December. I couldn't go to Skills until the next summer, so I got a job.
All right, but you worked Skills, you were in Alexandria, correct?
Yes.
And the job you got was at Anoka State Hospital?
Yes.
That was between your Skills? Say that again.
So
slowly.
I got hired there in February, and I worked for a year on a calendar year. But the Anoka City Police Department would allow their students or their employees, to go to Skills and still have a job on weekends or when they would get back before they got hired as a law enforcement officer.
So at Anoka State Hospital, what did you do?
I was a security officer.
And Anoka State Hospital is basically a detox center now, is that right?
No, it had a detox. It had a countywide detox and a detox program. It also had drug and alcohol abuse rehabilitation and mental illness.
And what did you do there? You were in security?
Yes.
Does that mean you had to deal with the folks that are staying there, the residents?
Yes.
And were you successful in that?
Yes.
After working there, where did you go next?
I left there and got hired at the City of Brooklyn Center.
In what year were you hired at the Brooklyn Center Police Department?
1995.
And when were you sworn in?
February the 27th.
Of 1995?
Correct.
Who was that you were sworn in?
My mother and my father.
So after you're sworn in, you started working as a Brooklyn Center police officer?
Yes.
And what year was that again?
1995.
So that would be, my math, 26 years before you resigned? Is
Yes.
that a fair statement?
Yes.
When you worked as a police officer at Brooklyn Center throughout those 26 years, did you remain a patrol officer all during that time?
I did.
And why was that? Why didn't you attempt to go up the ladder like the other officers we heard from?
I liked my work. I enjoyed working with community. I didn't want to be in an administrative role.
But did you also, even though you were a patrol officer, you did take part in other programs, for example, the FTO program, right?
Yes, I did.
And that's the field training?
Yes, I was a field training officer for many years.
How many years?
I don't have an exact number, 10 to 15.
And we've learned in this case what a field training officer does, but very briefly, what did you do?
I would get probationers in different stages of their training, either in their first phase, their second phase, their third phase, or their final phase. Usually, the primary phase or the first phase and the final phase were always with the same FTO. And then other FTOs would train the other two stages.
And why did you continue to do that for so many years?
I felt that I had knowledge and mentorship that I could help young officers develop into somebody I would want to work with and my partners would want to work with.
There are other programs that you volunteered for or joined while
Yes.
you were a police officer, is that correct?
Yes.
And after you became a police officer, what was the first program that you joined or volunteered?
I became an Explorer advisor for our Explorer post.
And what's an Explorer post? Is that the younger people that are...
Yes, the program through the Boy Scouts of America.
And in that program you teach them about policing, is that right?
Yes.
And after that Explorer program that you joined, what else did you do as a police officer?
I was on the domestic abuse response team. I was also a crisis negotiator.
Let's stop at the domestic abuse program. How long were you on that? Approximately.
10, 12 years, maybe more, maybe less.
And what did that program entail?
We would respond, so officers would go out on domestic abuse situations or domestic calls, and if there was a victim of a crime or an arrest made, or not an arrest made, we would follow up the next day with the victims to see that they were getting the things they needed, like domestic advocates, walking them through, getting order for protections if they had questions, and then helping them and checking in with them through the court process.
And did you enjoy doing that?
Yes.
Why?
Sometimes there were great successes, and sometimes there were very sad failures.
There's another program that you're involved in, was a hostage program?
I was a crisis negotiator for the parent umbrella of the EOU team, the Emergency Operations Unit.
And what did you do in that?
I was a crisis negotiator.
What does that mean?
We would go out on barricaded subjects, or we would go out with the SWAT team would be the easiest way to describe it, on warrants. We would respond to calls where there may be people in danger.
And was your job to try and negotiate with the subject and get him to submit to being arrested?
Yes, he or she.
Was that your main job?
No, I was always a patrol officer.
No, I mean, as far as a hostage negotiator, that's what you did.
Yes, I was a crisis negotiator.
And what other programs were you in?
I was on the Law Enforcement Memorial Association Honor Guard.
And what is that?
So the parent is the Minnesota Law Enforcement Memorial Association. They do a lot of work to help survivors and their families make their way through the process of getting benefits after their officer is killed in the line of duty. I was on the Honor Guard.
What did you do being on the Honor Guard?
When I started in 1998, I was on the colors team for approximately a year or two, and then I went to the casket team.
Well, what's the color team?
The color team carries flags.
And the casket team?
We would carry the casket or the urn of the fallen officer and then fold their flag.
And would you be in contact also with the victim or the deceased family?
Sometimes with the family, a lot of times with the chief of police, because I would have to give the folded flag to the police chief.
And this was throughout the state of Minnesota?
Yes.
And these were police officers killed in the line of duty?
Yes.
Or other law enforcement officers?
Most of 99% of it would be killed in the line of duty, or we would do some retiree funerals.
Any other programs you're involved in?
I did a lot of crime prevention work for our police department and other presentations.
Crime prevention presentations?
Yes.
What were those?
I was assigned an apartment complex in the city, and I would meet with management, and we would do some programming for their residents as far as personal safety, locking your car doors, taking valuables out of your cars, just regular safety in an apartment complex. And then I would do some other presentations on robbery prevention for banks in the city.
By the way, when you were doing the carrying caskets for that in that program, were you aware of officers that were killed in the line of duty by making a traffic stop?
Yes, Sean Patrick from Mendota Heights.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike and
The objection is overruled. I'll let the answer stand.
During your 26 years as a police officer, did you ever receive any complaints for abusing your power?
No.
Did you ever receive any complaints from the public?
No.
In training, did you attend all the training sessions required by the Brooklyn Center Police Department while you were there?
Yes.
And with respect to gun training, laser training, you attended all those too, right?
Yes, I did.
And did you pay attention?
Yes, I did.
With respect to that, in your approximation, I'm not asking for exact numbers, but with respect to the training, what would you say the amount of training was for the firearm, for the gun, and the amount of training for the laser? What would be the percentages there?
For the firearms, it would be probably 80%. We spent a lot more time on firearms than we did on taser.
And tasers didn't come into the being until years after you're a law enforcement officer, right?
Yes, I believe trainers in this courtroom had said 2002 or 2003.
And you started as a law enforcement officer, what year?
1995.
With respect to tasers, did I say lasers? With respect to tasers, there's been evidence in the case that you had a Taser 7, is that correct?
Yes.
And the evidence in that was that the Taser 7 was shaped like a gun, fair statement?
Yes.
And the Taser 7 had a dark black, or at least a dark handle, and a dark top. Do you remember that?
objection, leading.
I'm trying.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
The taser that you received, was it approximately a month before April 11th that you received this taser? Do you remember?
In the courtroom, I was told I received it on March the 26th.
Okay. And also, while we're there, with respect to these tasers and testing them, the rule that we read said should test the electronics every day. Is that right?
Yes.
And there is testimony that you didn't test yours a couple days. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I was told.
And do you agree with that you didn't test it?
I don't recall if I would have or wouldn't have.
And was that an important feature for law enforcement officers with new tasers
No.
that never used them since they had them?
Correct.
And while we're there, did you ever use a taser, use it by actually shooting it in all of your years' career as a law enforcement officer?
I would take my taser out on rare occasions, but I don't believe I ever deployed it.
Okay, when you take your taser out, it's to de-escalate what is going on. Is that a fair statement?
Sometimes, or to prepare for what might be behind a door. Sometimes an officer has a gun and sometimes an officer has a taser out.
All right. And now the taser that was switched from you, did that go to one of your partners, that taser?
My old taser?
Yes.
I believe they were just put in storage at the police department.
And those tasers were all yellow, right? The handle, the top, the whole thing was yellow?
Yes, except for the battery pack, I believe that was black, and there was some
Okay.
markings on the side.
I'm going to show you these tasers. Show you this taser.
Judge, may we have a sidebar, please?
Yes. Jane.
Okay, well, do you specifically remember your old taser? By that I mean the one before the 7 being all yellow.
Yes.
And was that an X26 taser?
I believe it was an X26P.
P? So, with respect to the tasers, there's been evidence about signing some forms on warnings. Do you remember signing those forms?
In our annual training, we would be handed a form to sign, and I would sign it.
And do you remember the warnings on them at all?
Not from those days, no.
And with respect to weapons confusion, was there ever any training, actual training about weapons confusion as you remember it?
No.
Did you even know what weapons confusion was before?
Yeah.
Wait till I finish the question. Before April 11th?
It would be mentioned in training, but it wasn't something we physically trained on.
And by that you mean what?
There was no training on weapons confusion. You wouldn't be set in a dark room and told to grab which weapon.
So, I'm going to go now to April 11th, 2021, a Sunday. And you surely remember that day, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were an FTO that day for Officer Lucky?
Yes, I was.
And that day, what time did you go on duty?
6 a.m.
And was Lucky on duty at that time too?
Yes.
And about, what did you do during the morning? If you remember, did you just do drive around police work?
We just did police work. We would have checked a squad car if we wouldn't have had calls right away.
It was a Sunday.
It was a Sunday.
So approximately around 2 o'clock, did you pull up in back of, or not you, Officer Lucky was driving a car, right, the squad?
Yes.
And you were the FTO. Where were you seated in the car?
In the passenger seat.
And tell the jury what you remember about first seeing the white Buick on that day, approximately 2 p.m. And talk slowly.
Officer Lucky and I were driving south on Zane Avenue North. We were talking about pursuit policies, doing some regular FTO training, and he observed a vehicle in the turn lane with a blinker on inappropriately.
And was that the white Buick?
Yes.
And did you have a conversation with him about that?
Yes.
And what was that conversation?
We discussed a little bit of suspicious activity. He noticed a pine tree or air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror, and the tabs were expired.
And did you stop that vehicle?
Officer Lucky wanted to stop the vehicle, yes.
And let me ask you sort of a hypothetical. If you had been working alone that day on Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock, would you have stopped the vehicle for...
Objection, relevance, calls for speculation.
I can't even finish the question, Your Honor.
All right.
That's not fair. It's simply, they know how to try a lawsuit, I would
Okay.
think.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
My question was, if you weren't with a field training officer that day and you were on patrol alone, would you have stopped that vehicle?
Most likely not.
And why not?
An air freshener to me is it's just an equipment violation. And during the COVID times, the high COVID times, the Department of Motor Vehicles was so offline that people weren't getting tabs, and we were advised not to try to enforce a lot of those things because the tabs were just not in circulation.
Okay, but you did stop the vehicle, right?
Yes, part of field training is that my probationer would make numerous contacts with the public throughout the day.
And what happened after the stop? If you remember, go ahead.
Before Officer Lucky stopped the car, he ran the vehicle, confirmed that the registration was expired and that the registered owner had a petty misdemeanor type warrant for some type of drug offense.
And that was the registered owner of the vehicle?
Yes.
So you did that while you were still in the squad car and not...
Yes, it's part of the multitasking that a probationer will have to do, is run a vehicle license plate, call into dispatch, and initiate their lights.
Okay, and try and talk a little slower. I know you're probably nervous, but I'd like to get all this in. All right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you stopped the vehicle, is that right?
Officer Lucky initiates the traffic stop.
And what happened after he did that?
The vehicle stopped kind of in an entrance to the church on 63rd, and he got on the PA and told the vehicle to pull ahead just a short distance.
Was that because he was parked in the driveway of the...
Yeah, and I think there was a vehicle trying to come out, as I recall.
Okay. What happened next?
Officer Lucky and I exited our marked squad car. Officer Lucky walked up to the driver's door, and I stood at the right rear corner of the white Buick.
So you did get out of the car?
Most definitely.
And why did you stand where you were standing?
Part of it was so I could see where Officer Lucky was, and to provide cover to see what else was in the vehicle.
In your experience of 26 years and being a patrol officer all those years, is stopping any vehicle at any time that you don't know, does that be considered a dangerous situation?
Yes.
Why?
Sometimes there's guns in the car, sometimes there's uncooperative people. You don't know who you're stopping.
Yeah, because you don't know, right?
Right.
So, while you were standing there in the rear of the vehicle, did you hear what Officer Lucky said?
I could hear parts of the conversation. He didn't seem to be in any distress when he was asking questions. He took out his notepad, and it looked like he was writing down something which would end up being a name and date of birth.
Okay, and after he did that, did you two go back to the squad car?
Yes.
And at some point in time during the stop or right after it, did Officer Lucky do anything in connection with obtaining another squad car?
Yes, he called for a second car to come.
What is that about? What?
It would just be a backup officer. The registered owner had a warrant of some nature. It wasn't a bad warrant. It was just a regular petty warrant, which would still, you'd want a second officer. or I guess in this case, a third officer. Officer Lucky and I are considered only one officer.
And why are you and Lucky just one officer?
Because he's in field training and he's a probationary employee.
All right. So did the third officer, Officer Johnson, arrive at some point in time?
Yes, Sergeant Johnson arrived.
And was that before you looked up in the computer about this driver of the vehicle, or after?
I don't know exactly when he arrived. I know Officer Lucky and I were Officer Lucky and I were discussing running the name he was given through some various systems.
Okay, and did you do that, you and Officer Lucky?
Yes.
Was there any correction that you told him about during this time that he shouldn't have put the name in one?
He had gone to the Minnesota, because the driver didn't provide him with any government-issued ID, he would have to verify some information to run him properly in our system through TriTech. So you run them sometimes through Minnesota DVS with just a name and a date of birth. It'll give you a Soundex hit on various people with that either same name or common name with a date of birth.
So did you correct him on that?
We were talking about, I don't know if I corrected him on it, but
So what happened after that?
he would copy the OLN, which is a driver's license number, off the screen and then put it into our TriTech system, or CAD, and that would run him through the state for driver's license and warrants and other hits.
And did you find anything about the driver?
The driver came back with a suspended driver's license, gross misdemeanor, bench warrant for weapons, and a protection order.
So a gross misdemeanor for weapons ordinance, what went through your mind, if anything, when you read that?
It would be concerning that there'd be a weapon on the person or in the vehicle.
And why would that be?
In my experience over 26 years, I have found guns in cars, either by accident or by them just sitting out in plain view.
And what about a person with a weapons warrant?
They're more likely to be carrying a weapon or have a weapon access to them.
So what about the was it a temporary restraining order that came up? Was that it?
Yeah, I think they're called ex parte orders. It would be a temporary protection order until the parties would either have a court hearing in front of a judge to make it a permanent order.
And there would be a name of a female on that?
Yes,
order?
there was.